friends, and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title of today's video, I will be reading the 5 lowest rated books on my TBR. This TBR list is pulled from Goodreads, so it's not necessarily like my most concise and ordered TBR list. These are just books that I randomly see or hear about that I just happen to add to my Goodreads shelf, but I want to kind of get through some of the books that I otherwise wouldn't really think about. So the first book that I will be reading for this vlog is The Cabin at the End of the World by Tremblay. It is at a 3.38 and it's pretty short, but it has a pretty substantial amount of rating. And something that I've noticed about thrillers is they tend to be rated pretty lowly. I don't know, I think people go in with different expectations, or just various things, different things scare different people. So the other lowly rated thriller that I'm going to read is Every Value Break by Swanson. This is a pretty new release, and it has a 3.44 on Goodreads thus far. We will see how this goes. This got pretty similar ratings to that new Ruth Ware book, the one that people that had the snow on the cover. They didn't like it because it was just like your plain old thriller. Mystery was kind of obvious and all of that. And then the last thriller that I'm going to be reading is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This has a 3.57, and this is a pretty popular thriller. I am honestly kind of shocked that the ratings are so low for this one, because I have heard nothing but good things about this. I have heard that it's fairly slow and people don't really love reading slow things, thrillers specifically. So then the last 2 books that I will be reading for this is Stardaughter. The least excited about this one, to be honest. I've heard not great things about it. It has a 3.37, so we'll see how that goes. And then the last book I will be reading is Unbecoming. This has a 3.39 rating. In a grubby antiques shop on the outskirts of Paris, Grace restores bric-a-brac, men's teapots, resets gems. She calls herself Julie, says she's from California, and slips back to a rented room at night. From an anonymous internet cafe, she checks the website of her hometown paper. Back in Garland, Tennessee, 2 young men are about to be paroled. Both have served time for a crime about which Grace knows a great deal. Their daring escapade went bad, but not before Grace made it onto a plane, contraband in her carry-on, and began methodically disassembling the known facts of her life. Now she knows that somehow a piece of her past will find her. As the story unfolds, taking us from small-town USA to the heights and depths of the art scene in New York and Europe, we learn who Grace has been, a girl with a messy, broken home life and a knack for making herself lovable, until she comes face to face with what she actually wants and everything falls apart. And so begins a cat and mouse waiting game, a tale of lies and deception, desperate stakes, and dual identities. I will be reading these books over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully I will get some gems out of these books that people say aren't that good. So let us get into the vlog portion of this video. Hi friends, I have started 2 books since my little intro. I started The Cabin at the End of the World by Tremblay. This is the thriller about the random strangers that show up at this family's vacation house. I am 120-ish pages in, and I feel a little bit...
I know you can be overwhelmed, and you can be underwhelmed. But can you ever just be whelmed? I think you can in Europe.
It's quick and easy to read, but there's nothing about this that's particularly shocking, unless something changes. But they've basically just been having this one conversation for 80 pages, and it's a little bit boring at this point. I don't know if this is going to be like twisty and turny or it's just supposed to be gruesome. For a quick little read, it's not bad. I mean, I could see why it would get like a 3-star, because it's kind of just meh. It's very much like The Strangers-esque, which I love The Strangers. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And so it's kind of like that in book form, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, like I said, I love The Strangers, but I just need something a little bit more spicy. They've been tied to this chair talking about the end of the world for too many pages at this point. I'm a little bit bored of it, but it's a short book. It's only like 260 pages, so we're gonna continue and give it a shot. I also started the audiobook for Star Daughter. I have about 9 hours of the 13-hour audiobook left, and this is, it's okay. There is, I think I did myself a disservice. Well, a disservice was done to me because the only way I could access this book was via an audiobook, and the predominant like mythos is Hindu and a lot of like Indian culture and things like that, things that I'm not familiar with myself. And obviously that's not a flaw of the book. Like, not everything needs to be westernized culture for me to be able to read it and enjoy it, but there's a lot of words and things that aren't explained, and so I would like access to like a glossary or something. Not saying that the author has to explain in the story, but I'm pretty sure that the book probably comes with a glossary, and the fact that I'm listening to the audiobook is kind of not allowing me to have some of the clarifications that I think I would need to really understand the story a whole lot or visualize it. But she has just gotten to the heavens, or like the star place, and she is being kind of manipulated into working and like being in this competition. So her father, she's half star, and her mother left when she was like 6, and so she hasn't had any contact with her in like 10 years. She finds out that someone in her life is from a line of like star hunters, because they found out that star blood has like healing properties, and that kind of opens her up to this bigger world about stars. And in her conversation with her family about like, why did you hide this from me? Like, I should have known about all of this. Like, you should have told me. She ends up losing control of her powers, and she burns her father, and it gives him a heart attack. So she thinks that she needs star blood to save him. So she answers the call. Like, she's been getting this star song call from her family, and so she's now like in this world, and she's basically been blackmailed into becoming her family's champion in this competition, by saying like, if you win the competition, not just enter it, win, we will give you some of our blood to save your dad. She's kind of just like learning stuff, and the issue that I'm having, like personally, like I said, without a glossary or with any like prior knowledge into this like mythology, this world, or anything, I'm having trouble like picturing it and imagining the world, because a lot of like the terms talked about and the things described are like Hindu based things, so I don't know them and I can't picture them. So the world feels overly flowery and descriptive because I can't picture it. Does that make sense? Like, I love flowery writing. Like, one of my all-time favorite authors is Erin Morgenstern, the definition of flowery. But because the flowery doesn't work with my comprehension of the story, it seems like there's a lot of fluff and not a lot of story. It's a pretty long book. It's 13 hours and 4 hours in. So I'm gonna keep listening to it. But it's kind of just meh at this point. The writing is beautiful. I can give it that. But again, it just feels fluffy for the sake of being fluffy rather than building the world. Because again, I don't understand the world. So those are the 2 books that I have started, and we will talk again when I have finished one of them. Hi friends. So I am a little more than halfway through both of the books that I started this vlog with. But of course I start this vlog the week that Cottage Living, the Sims 4 expansion, came out, which was like literally anything I could ever wish for in Sims. Like, I've been playing Sims since I was in elementary school, and this is like the best thing I've ever seen from Sims. So I'm very, very excited about it, but that means that I need to remind myself that to listen to audiobooks and stuff like that. So, you know, I got distracted. I also re-downloaded Harvest Moon, and I'm replaying Harvest Moon. So altogether, my gaming life is A++, but my reading life is tanking. So let's talk about what I have read so far. I am a little over halfway through Stardaughter, and I'm having the same feelings that I had on my first update. I'm super bored. This is a very, very long book, and I think this is the time in my reading life where I am realizing that I am done reading YA. Not maybe for the rest of life, but the characters and their decision making and how they're talking and how they're interacting with each other, like, it's really ruining the story for me, and they're really annoying, and it's just not fun. There are plot lines that they're introducing and different things that they're introducing that I just know aren't gonna go anywhere because, like, it's predictable. I would say this is like between middle grade and young adult, if that were like a thing. It's definitely like young adult. All of the things that I feel like I wanted from this story aren't really panning out. The competition aspect is not interesting at all. They're just all annoying, and the romance is dumb. Like, it's very easy for me to believe in a romance. Like, give me 2 or 3 personality traits amongst my couple where I feel like they would make sense because of X, Y, and Z personality traits, and I can pretty much get on board with that. I can pretty much get on board with any relationship that you throw at me if you give me like the sliverest? If you give me like the slightest indication of why they might want to be with each other, but this just doesn't make any sense, and like I don't get it. Like, all this angst and all of that, it's all just really boring to me, and I'm just kind of ready for it to be over. I still have like 6 hours left, and it's honestly just dragging so much. It's ridiculous. I'm like not even listening to it, so I should DNF it, but I just, it's gonna be like a 2. I can feel it. Thank you, Gotham, for moving so I can set my camera down. If you read reviews, like, that's basically what everybody says. And I recognize that I'm not necessarily the age demographic for this. Like, fair enough. Maybe I'm just interested in different things than what this story is currently providing me. The other book that I am 198 pages into is The Cabin at the End of the World. And this is also getting kind of boring. So I'm gonna talk a little bit in depth about some spoilers. So if you are interested in reading this book, skip ahead. But so essentially the story goes like this couple, 2 dads and a daughter, are at this cabin for vacation. And this group of people, there's 4 of them, 2 guys, 2 girls, show up, and they have weapons, and they basically say, like, let us in or we're gonna force our way in. So they let them in, and then they end up getting tied to chairs. The 2 dads do. The group basically says, like, you don't choose who to sacrifice, like either one of the dads or the daughter, the world is gonna end, basically. And they, of course, are like, okay, well, we have no proof. And then they show them proof, and then they're still like, okay, that's obviously not proof. We're not gonna sacrifice each other. And so they bludgeon one of the men of like their posse to death in front of the 2 dads and the daughter. And this just seems like a weird strategy to me, and it doesn't really make sense because eventually you're gonna run out of people and then they're just gonna be alive. So like, how do you expect this is gonna go? Like, they're just gonna sit there tied to their chairs and let you kill each other. I don't get it, because you already said that you're not gonna you can't kill them yourselves, and you can't hurt them in any way to persuade them to kill each other. So how is this gonna, like, I'm not understanding. And if this was like sent to you from a higher purpose, that higher purpose doesn't make any damn sense. Like, your mission is incomplete. It makes no sense. It's easy. The holes in your mission are easy to spot. Almost done. And like, the thing that just happened, like, I just don't care. And I I don't know where we go from here. Like, I feel like it's over, you know, and I still have 60 something pages left, and I just don't, like, I would have liked them to have been silent for a little bit longer, take longer to get into the house, build up that anticipation of, okay, these are scary motherfuckers, and then get into the, like, the torturing and stuff like that, because this just doesn't make sense. Like, there's too many holes, and, like, it would just be, I would just sit tied to the chair and be like, okay, like, I'm not gonna sacrifice my husband or my child to you random strangers when I could just sit here, watch you kill each other, and then be free. Like, it makes no sense. Like, what's the game plan here? And the group is saying, like, oh, it's a message from God. They all got these visions. And there's, like, this weird connection between one character, like, one of the people that gets killed early on from the group, and the guy. Like, he had a run-in with him in a bar. The guy called him the F word and, like, bashed a beer bottle over his head. And it just seems very odd that this is connected, but not connected, if that makes sense. Like, if we find out that that guy was, like, actually a mastermind and, like, he planned this whole thing because he feels like he got sent to prison because of the guy that reported him for assaulting him, then cool, we'll go from there. But, like, I don't get that connection. Like, I don't know if it's, like, a red herring, if it's just supposed to confuse us. If it's not, like, an actual part of the story and it was just, like, a throwaway plot line, like, it just doesn't, like, why? You know, why? So I'm gonna finish both of them, hopefully, and move on to the other books, but we'll see, because both of them right now are just kind of a snooze fest. And that might be because I'm distracted by other things. It might be because they're just actually snooze fests. I don't really know, but I'm gonna come back and tell you what I think it is. So, catch you later. So I managed to finish both Stardaughter and The Cabin at the End of the World, and I gave both of them 2 stars. We'll start with Stardaughter. It just got progressively worse as the book went on. The plot kind of just lost its way. It became very meandering. The, like, competition plot line just didn't make sense at the end. Like, the villain was just kind of dumb, and just altogether, I just didn't really like it. And then Cabin at the End of the World, also ended up giving 2 stars. I hated this. Like, past the 180 mark was awful. Like, truly boring, hard skim. The ending pissed me off so much. I just didn't like it, like, at all. I think it was a terrible thriller, and the, like, 60 pages at the end were spent debating whether these people were, you know, in some sort of shared delusion, or if, like, the world was actually ending. And then the way that they described the group dynamic was just kind of dumb, and just all of it, even the ending, I didn't like the ambiguous ending. None of it. I was not a fan. So, 2 stars to both of those. So hopefully the remainder of the books, okay, well, on this list will do better. I'm gonna start Every Value Break next. I'm expecting When No One Is Watching to be like 4 to 5 stars. We'll see about the other 2. The Unbecoming should be interesting. I just finished Every Value Break by Peter Swanson, and I'm going to give it 3 stars, even though it's probably more like a 2 star. When I first finished this book, I was like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Like, I read it in like 2 sittings. Fine, good little thriller. And then the more I thought about it, the worse, like, the book got. It's extremely predictable, to the point where I was like, that can't even be the twist. Like, that's so obvious that that's the twist, that it just cannot even be true that that's what it is. And it is. So if you're reading this and you figure it out in, like, the first 10 pages, you figured it out. I'm gonna get into spoilers, so if you are interested in reading this book for some unknown reason. Go ahead and skip ahead. But the biggest issue that I had with this, besides the fact that it's very predictable, is that the main character makes no sense, and it's very obvious that it was a man writing a woman. Like, you can tell by the way that she thinks that it's not a woman, if that makes sense. Like, she's put in this situation and her response doesn't make any sense. She's been locked in a cage, and rather than thinking, which I think 99.9999% of women would think, I'm going to be assaulted or something horrible is going to happen to me, that doesn't even cross her mind. She doesn't even think about getting out. She thinks about, oh, I need to talk to the girl that's in here with me and we need to figure out what happened. And that it doesn't make any sense, because any woman would immediately go to that, because that's just like a fear that is bred and beat into us continuously, that if we're vulnerable, especially with a group of men that are in power, something like that is going to happen to us. So her thought processing just made no sense. And aside from that, she turned into like a survivalist at the end. So she's like running from them and hiding, and all of a sudden she's shooting a bow like perfectly. She's like sliding and tackling people, and she's like going over cliffs, and she's like expertly handling a gun, and just like and kayaking across the ocean. Like, it didn't make any sense. I don't know, it just got worse the longer I thought about it, and it was kind of nonsensical. So I think a lot of the things that should have been explained, like more about the cult and more about the island and all of that, should have been more explained than what we got. So if you continue to watch the spoilers and you haven't read this book and you don't know what I'm talking about, this is about a woman who, in the very beginning of the book, cheats on her husband, and she goes to this island on a honeymoon, and then the guy that she cheated on her husband with, or fiance at the time, shows up at the island. And so she kind of thinks that he's stalking her. And that's like all in the synopsis, but that happens like within, like all of that happens within like the first 50 pages, and then beyond that is a whole other thing. And then you get into this idea that the whole island is all men. There's only like 2 women there. They're acting very skittishly. One of the women is like experiencing a similar situation to her, where her like ex that she cheated on her current partner with is like on the island as well. And it all sets up for this scene where all of the guys are basically in a cult or something, and they are bringing women there to punish them for their sins. It just was very odd, and we get no explanation for like the camp that the island used to be, or like how these men came together, or anything about how this happened, but you get a lot of like backstory into the main character, which is ultimately irrelevant to the story. So I don't know, altogether it just didn't work, and I didn't like it, and the more I think about it, the worse it gets. So 3 stars. I might end up dropping it down to a 2. We'll see how long I talk to myself about it. So the last physical book that I have to read for this video is Unbecoming. This is the like Bonnie and Clyde, I think, the femme fatale story. So we'll see how this goes, about a woman who's involved in murder or something like that, and then she runs away, and then we're getting like her backstory on what happened. So this should be interesting. And then I have the audiobook for When No One Is Watching. These are kind of like the 2 I'm most excited about. When No One Is Watching would be like the most, and then this one, I think When No One Is Watching is going to be like one of the only good outcomes of this video. But yes, I'm going to start these 2, and then I'll come back to you. I'm halfway through the audiobook for When No One Is Watching, and I'm really enjoying this. I read several reviews for it, and I know that people's largest complaint is that it is very slow, but I think that it's kind of perfect given that the discussion around like the thriller or like what is actually happening is gentrification, which is a very slow process. But I can understand why people looking for a thriller would want something a little quicker than this. I'm still loving it. I think there's a lot of different aspects going into the story that is making it scary. I wouldn't say that it's like scary in the like I'm gonna have to sit in my bed under my covers and like be afraid to look in the dark at the corner kind of situation, but it's definitely unsettling. There is a lot of different components going on with this. So this is basically about a woman who she lives in Brooklyn, and she has started noticing that more rich people are moving in and they're doing a redevelopment on the neighborhoods. And so you are getting the viewpoint of her and a guy that just moved in, and he's white. And she took a tour of like the Brooklyn area in the beginning of the book. That's like kind of what opens it. And there isn't like an accurate description of like what the neighborhood is actually, like the history of the neighborhood. It's mostly about all of the rich white people that live there and like what they did, but nothing about like the true history or any of like the actual communities that live in Brooklyn. She teams up with the guy to like put together an actual history of what's going on. Walking tour, I guess is what they're called. And that's kind of the barest plot, but it hasn't really played a part. Like it's played a part in their interactions, and it's like kind of brewing somewhat of a romance between them. But mostly it's about Sydney, who's kind of dealing with a lot. Her mom's apartment is about to be foreclosed on. Her mom is kind of losing agency. She is elderly and living in a retirement community. Sydney is in a job that she doesn't like, and all of her neighbors and people that she grew up with are disappearing and she doesn't know why. And the crime has increased. There was a boy in the neighborhood that got mysteriously arrested for something that they know he didn't commit, like a crime he didn't commit. So it's just a lot of different things compounded into the story, which are very realistic. I think you get distracted by this thing over here that you're not seeing the bigger picture of what's actually going on. And then Theo is experiencing some racism, not towards himself, but towards his neighbors and things like that from his wife and her friends and the other white people that are moving into the neighborhood. So he's kind of reevaluating his relationships and also working with Sydney to do the walkthrough, and also just kind of focusing on like what's happening with his neighbors as well. And like I said, it's definitely slow. I wouldn't say anything particularly scary has happened on page. There was like one scene where she thinks someone's in her apartment, but that's the scariest it's been on page. Everything else is just kind of, you're looking at it from a micro level, and it's like a macro horror kind of situation, if that makes sense. So I am enjoying it. And I am not very far into this. 10 pages into this. I have been trying to read this when I go to bed at night. It's hard for me to focus sometimes reading in bed. So I want to get a little bit more reading done here. I think I'm all video gamed out. So I'll probably listen to an audiobook and play Sims and then bounce back and forth between that and this. And I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. So far, the writing is kind of boring. The main character moved to France to escape a crime that she committed, and she becomes like someone that like repairs antiques and stuff like that. And it's pretty boring. For the first, I would say I'm 9 pages in. 3 of those pages were just describing like her at work, like doing work things, which was kind of annoying. But I'm excited to actually get into the story. It's actually fairly short. It doesn't look it. It's only 307 pages. So I'm expecting that once we actually get into the story, it's gonna pick up. But that is the update. I will come at you guys again when I have finished something. I just finished When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and I ended up giving it 4 stars, like as expected. I figured it would be something like that rating. I loved it. I think if you go into this thinking of it as a horror, then you will enjoy it a lot more. I definitely think that it was marketed a little weirdly, because it's definitely more on the horror side in many different aspects. I really liked that it mirrors what actual gentrification is like. There's a lot of discussions in the book, and there's a lot of interpersonal drama. There's a lot of drama going on with the main character. You don't know if she's reliable or not, and there's kind of a lot of quiet horror going on, if that makes sense. A lot of stuff that's like slowly adding up, but in the moment it doesn't feel it doesn't feel horrific in the moment, but you compound the things all together and it feels scary. And then about 80% of the way through the book, it gets wild. It literally goes from like nothing to everything all at once, like shooting people, like just crazy. And I really liked it. I think it was good. I can definitely understand people who would give it like 1 star, and I can understand people who would give it 5 stars. I personally enjoyed it. I personally don't have an issue with slow most of the time, depending on the story. So I didn't have an issue with it, but I can see why someone would feel like it was not worth it. So I could see it either way. I am not much further into Unbecoming. I am 28 pages in. I think that's exactly where I was the last time I updated you. And I just need to jump into it. I keep getting distracted by DVD, by BookTube, just a bunch of different stuff. And I need to just sit down and do it. It's the last book for this video, and I don't think it's going to be terrible, but we'll see. We've already started to get like little hints that there's more to the story. Obviously, we know that from the synopsis, and more to the main character that she's hiding. I just need to actually read it. But for right now, I'm going to catch up on some BookTube videos and maybe do some reading. And then I'll talk to you a little bit later on about Unbecoming, maybe when I'm halfway, maybe when I'm done. We'll see how it goes. I am not any further into Unbecoming, but I want to talk about something because I don't ever really get too personal on my channel, because I feel like most people are just watching me, if they're watching me, to hear about the books I'm reading. But I wanted to talk about this in part because I want to maybe help someone that feels like they're alone in this, but also kind of get out how I'm feeling, and maybe someone else can relate. But I have never really been like a reality TV show sort of person. I never really watched it much growing up. I would watch like a couple episodes just to like scratch that itch for some drama. Recently I started watching 90 Day Fiancé. Cool, everything's good. Then I watched a video of a reaction channel watching Love Island, and I was like, oh, this seems like a bunch of drama. Let's like watch it, and it'll be fun. If you don't know what Love Island is about, it's literally they threw a bunch of hot people in like $1 million villa and told them that they had to couple up, and it's like drama ensues. I have been watching it for 12 hours straight, and it's like really fucking me up. Like, I'm gonna get into some talk about like body image issues, so if that's like something that is a problem, make sure, you know, like you skip ahead if you don't want to watch this. I'll put a time right here, but it's like the more episodes I watch, it's entertaining, but it's like really sending me spiraling. Over like the last 2 years, I've had a lot of issues with the way that I look and my self-esteem. Especially I started gaining a lot of weight, and I would look back on like pictures of myself when I was like 18, 19, and I would feel bad about myself because that's not how I look anymore. I'm bigger. This is like the heaviest I've ever been in my life. And I've always had issues with the way that I look and with the way other people look at me. So looking at all of these people that are attractive and they have like the perfect bodies and all of that, walking around in bikinis and like these really great outfits has like really messed me up. I'm spiraling a little bit, and I had to stop watching it. And I don't really know what to do, really, because this has never happened before. I have always very much been not someone that my body image issues are driven by other attractive people, if that makes sense. Like, I've never looked at people that are like skinny or whatever and made me feel worse. I don't know how to phrase it, because I will get in rooms with people that are smaller than me or people that I think are more attractive than me, and I will start to obsess over the way that I look and how much space I'm taking up. But it's never been a thing where I like look at people on TV and it's sent me into like my own thoughts like that. But I think because it's something that I'm thinking about constantly all the time, how my clothes are fitting, what I look like, how my arms look, like what my back looks like all of that, like that's just constantly what I'm thinking about. I think seeing that in the forefront is like really messing me up. And I don't know like what to do. At the moment, all I can think is like maybe I need to read, maybe I need to like watch some comfort movies. I don't know, but it's, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that in case someone can relate or not feel like they have the same, or they're all alone if they feel the same way. So yeah, all right. I'll talk when I've actually read something. I DNF'd this. So I think the marketing and the description for this book is very wrong. There's nothing particularly interesting about this. This is like a coming of age type story that has like a little bit of a mystery to it. And the narrative style is not my favorite when reading stories. It's very much like 3 pages of talking about her current life and then like 2 pages of flashbacks, and then like that's the cycle, and I don't particularly love that. Altogether, this was just really, really boring. I got to about 100 or so pages into this, and it was a awful time to get through. So I probably won't give it another chance. So that means that I gave 2 stars to Stardaughter. I gave 2 stars to The Cabin at the End of the World. I gave 2 stars to Every Value Break. And I gave 4 stars to When No One Is Watching. If any of the books that I gave 2 stars is like one of your favorite books, I am so sorry for you that that's your favorite book. Just kidding. So if they are your favorites, let me know down in the comments why you enjoyed them so much. I would love to know. But other than that, it's going to be the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.